This is a weird sentence as the snowballs form in hell and as a pig flies past my window. We are about to talk about the 5th studio album by the American rock band Tool.
Tool.
Who
Don't know them.
They used to be big in the 90s.
They're pretty damn big now. If we look at the old Spotify streams and so on and so forth, they've broken a lot of records.
It seems kind of weird for me to even be normally I go, this is the 5th album, it's the last one since, you know the story by now, since 10,000 Days came out, we have waited 13 years, over 13 years in fact, for its successor. It has been the single most anticipated record in my lifetime ever, I would say, for me personally.
Ooh. Oh, okay. I can't argue with that then.
No. And I would say in terms of column inches and the amount of stuff written about it, it's kind of its legacy and its the mystery surrounding it. It sits with the Chinese democracy.
Yeah, the Chinese democracy was the one I was going to bring up.
The kind of obvious one.
Chinese democracy was 14 years. This is 13 years. Almost the same, you know. So yeah.
There are others. Second Coming of the Stone Roses. Although that
was like 5.
Like a feeble 5 years. Like that's fucking small change.
Was it 5? 89, 96,
95.
Was it 95? Okay.
Oh, yeah,
all
so
right, 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years. A feeble 6 years.
Well, I mean, Tool album cycles between Enema, Lateralis, 10,000 Days was 5 years. So, yeah, for the first sort of 4.5 years, it was like, oh, this is normal, it's fine. And then it just kept going and going and going and going. And then it emerged. Yeah.
To the point where we've spoken about this record many times. I've spoken about this record on the old Metal Hammer podcast to give you some idea of how fucking long we've been waiting for this record. Talking about it as if it might be coming out soon. And that's going back to 2011, 2012. I've spoken about it on Team Rock. I've spoken about it on various other podcasts and everything that I've done pretty much. Every year, I get asked by Metal Hammer to write a preview of the year and what is going to be the thing that we're most looking forward to. And every year, literally every year since I've been writing for that magazine, which goes back to, like I say, 2012, 2013 now, it's been this record.
Yeah.
Mad, isn't it?
So, you're really disappointed.
So here it is. Well, here's the thing I think we should say first, and we did say it a couple of weeks ago. Can anything live up to that? Could anything live up to that?
Well, why don't we bring in how we heard the record?
Don't fudge the question, Rem. You've got to answer the question.
I was going to answer the question through that.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about how we heard it.
So it's a very old school way of listening to records, and it came from, I believe, the first album to ever do it was Audioslave.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I believe it was. So basically, as journalists, we have to secretly, pretend we've not heard it, although you've not been doing that brilliantly.
Hey, come on.
No, it's been very good. No one guessed. And we go into the offices of the record label, in this case, Sony, and sit down and listen to the album very loud with...
Wow. You jumped quite a few bits.
I apologise. Go on. No, go on.
What you do is you go there and you are given a massive piece of paper with lots of words on it that all have must not, will not, you may not, this may. Lots of things going tick to say that you ain't going to do this, tick to say that you ain't going to do that, tick to say that you're going to shut your fucking face. Then that you are stripped of all your possessions.
I'm the reason I missed that out actually is because I didn't actually get this, but then I heard the record much later than you did, and I think they got to the point where they were like, "Oh, I just don't care anymore."
Right. Okay.
To be honest.
So I was.
But yeah, you heard it quite a bit earlier.
Yeah,
than I did.
I was stripped of my possessions. Well, my phone. Actually, second time.
You're making it sound really melodramatic.
Yeah.
I was stripped of all of my worldly possessions.
No, they took my phone and actually my bag as well. And the second time, I went,
me.
"Do you want me to the bag? Do you want me to give you back the bag?" And the girl went, "Oh no, you can keep the bag."
She'd already snaffled what she wanted from it.
Don't worry, I've only got my iPad and my my like portable Wi-Fi and my video camera, and like, so it'll be fine. I had a little joke, and
then they mobbed you, didn't they?
Yeah, and then I was held down. I was
and electrocuted.
Custody for about the same time as you would get for spitting in someone's face, which is why I won't be performing at Riot Fest this year.
That's a hell of a way to break it to me.
And and then you go and sit in a room with some plush sofas, and weird with the Tool album as well, because you got like coffee and crisps and snacks, which were like, you're in here for a while, was the implication.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and sat on a sofa, and various members of the press turned up and enjoyed it in various different ways. One particularly prominent member of the press, who I shan't name and shame, read a book for the first half of the album and then fell asleep, but still found enough in that meagre period of time to give it a 5 out of 5 review in the publication that they write for. And I won't say any more than that. But hey, it's not for me to say how people do their job. Anyway, so that's how you hear it.
Wow. Yeah. Yes. And going back to your original question, I got to hear it twice like that. You got to hear it 3 times. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In those circumstances. Now, like listening to a new Tool album, I mean, there was a review somewhere which basically started by saying you never listen to a Tool song for the first time because there's so much to take in. You can't really, you can't process it all. And I think if I'd only had 2 listens, if I'd only been able to listen to this record 2 times, it would be quite a different review. And so I think the first couple of times you hear it, there is this sense of like, is this really worth 13 years wait? But the truth is Tool albums, more so than the majority of music, I will say, not all of it, but the majority of music are things that you need to live with properly for a long time. Things that you have to go back to over and over again. And I mean, I should say, it almost
feels too premature for us to be reviewing it right now.
It really does, actually.
To be honest.
It really does. And you know, I think I can say this because it's happened and it's public knowledge. It's basically, the album has leaked since then in order to do a better job for you guys. We have, been able to listen to it more so as a result of that, as have thousands and millions of people. And I'm really pleased because I've probably only listened to it an additional 5 or 6 times. But that means I've listened to it 8 times overall rather than 2 times. And my opinion of it now is very, very different on the 8th listen than it is on the 2nd listen.
I think I've listened to it 8 times now.
Yeah. Well. So it's a shame. I understand why they do that. They want to... Look, Tool are a very mysterious band. They want to keep the secrecy. They want to keep it up for as long as they possibly can. But if there's any album that you don't want to do it with, it's a Tool record, probably. So it is kind of irritating, although I understand it at the same time. I understand why they do it. I think on first listen, I wasn't disappointed at all. But as you say, can anything live up to 13 years? Not on one listen, it can't. No. But on multiple listens, over and over and over and over, maybe. Maybe.
I sat there in that. So the first time I listened to it, because someone did actually tweet us and say, "Can you give us the exact?" They kind of wanted the specifics. So. First time I listened to it, there was me, 2 members of the Belgian Tool fan club.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And it would seem nice enough. And Tool's manager.
Oh, right.
We're in the room. And there's like 8 sofas in there.
Mm-hmm.
Big fucking sofas. Like really plush, nice office. And it was played at ear-splitting volume. Mm-hmm. Really loud. And when
as requested by the band, I believe.
By the band, yeah. And I have to say, due to the length of time that I'd waited for it, due to my anticipation for it, and due to the fact that it's quite a stirring opening, I think, at this point, even as we sit, I mean, obviously, I would have thought most people have listened to it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're probably going to listen to that before you listen to us talk about it, I would imagine.
You should do.
So, yeah. You should. So, Fear Inoculum, the title track, which starts with this guitar, which kind of sounds like a cello. I did actually think it was, some sort of based cello instrument.
No, it's a guitar with a, I want to say a phaser effect. I'm not sure if that's right. But yeah, it's a guitar with an effect on it. But yeah.
When that came in, at that volume, in that room, I got like goosebumps come up. Because I was just like, oh my fucking God, it's happening. It's actually happening. And, people will know that's a great song. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, it sounds like Tool.
Yeah.
And for me, at that point, just Tool sounding like Tool was thrilling enough. My initial burst of like, oh my fucking God, I was just completely like aghast. Like, oh fuck, it's happening. This is new Tool music.
That's
like,
a key thing to say.
Stuck with me for quite a long time.
That's a key thing to say, actually, because just taking another example of an album which took forever, which we've briefly mentioned, when Chinese Democracy came out, it didn't sound like a new Guns N' Roses album. It sounded like an incredibly extravagant Axl solo album.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to wait all this time and then go, oh yeah, that's Tool, and there are imitators, but none of them do it as well. And this is a Tool album, state the obvious, but it really sounds like it as well, and that's very encouraging. But it is different, isn't it?
Yeah, there are bits and bobs that are different. I mean, I would say that this is, to kind of get into the proper sort of meat of the records. This is, it feels like a consolidation rather than to me, this feels like a consolidation of Tool. Like, it feels like, when bands strip stuff away and you go, well, they've really trimmed the fat.
Yeah.
They've added the fat. Like, there's a lot of fat and a lot of meat to this record. And not in a bad way, because I don't think they're really capable of fucking things up to that extent. But they clearly know exactly who they are. And I think one of the things I said to you is, when you listen to 10,000 Days and you'd waited 6 years for it, you sort of listened to it and you thought, oh, well, what have they been doing in that 6-year period? Listening to Meshuggah a little bit. Do you know what I mean? They've clearly there was that polyrhythmic Meshuggah, metal influence in 10,000 Days.
Yeah, I think that's a little harsh on 10,000 Days, but okay, fine.
Straight away, you go, oh, I wonder what influences they have taken to kind of progress their music in that time period. And the most obvious one on 10,000 Days is Meshuggah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, that's fair, isn't it?
I've never thought about it, but yeah, probably. Yeah.
Whereas with this one, I was like, I wonder what they've been listening to in the last 13 years. Maybe we'll get a glimpse of little. And it would appear that what they've been listening to is more Tool. Do you know what I mean? They've been listening to themselves.
I put it to you, Steve, that your favourite band of all time are playing a joke on you by releasing a post-rock album. Tool have just released a Rent-Free Core record. Yes, they have.
Well...
Yes, they have. Yes, they have. Yes, they have.
Why?
Because everything about it is fits in line with post-rock albums. So you've got 6 very long songs, all over 10 minutes long. You don't have there aren't traditional song structures at all. The majority of the songs, almost all of them, probably bar Tempest or Sevenpest, we'll get to that, build upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. These are all characteristics of post-rock. I am not saying...
They're also characteristics of Tool.
Less so than post-rock.
And prog rock as well. I mean, I think it owes as much to King Crimson or Pink Floyd's as it does, Talk Talk or Mogwai. I think the balance is pretty...
I think Tool as a whole do. I'm not sure if I would say that specifically with this record, but I'm partly saying it to partly to annoy you. But I do also genuinely think
it's not annoying. I mean, that's kind of what they are. I don't think sort of prog rock. They're comfortable bedfellows.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, I mean, this is an album full of, if we're going to use 10,000 Days as a, this is an album full of Wings for Marie songs, or Reflection, or maybe even Third Eye. I mean, Third Eye is probably more the last song, which we'll get on to, but, it's whereas Tool used to do 1 or 2, maybe 3 maximum songs, which had this kind of length and this epicness and this, what I'm going to call post-rock quality to them. You could argue it's proggy as well, and that wouldn't be incorrect, but it seems very post-rocky to me. They have now basically written a whole album of that.
Yeah.
So I think there is a difference. And when you say it's a consolidation of Tool's music and their discography, because you said that to me before I'd heard it, and I think there are changes. I just think they're very subtle, and they come across more. I think it comes down to this being an album of reflections, and I'm talking about the song Reflection on. It is Reflection, isn't it? The really, really long one on Lateralis. It's. I mean, that's a song which is about 3 minutes long, and Maynard's. It's 11 minutes long, and Maynard's vocal doesn't come in for 3 minutes. And loads of these songs are like that. Loads of these songs have this thing where they build and build and build, and the very first riff you hear ends up being the very last riff you hear, except it's suddenly built to something which is way beyond what you could have comprehended when you first heard it. And I think when I first heard it, I was a little bit surprised that they had effectively taken the same, albeit unusual, song structure for every song on the record, bar one, probably.
Yes.
But listening to it more, I think it's done so masterfully and so brilliantly, and it corresponds so well with stuff that I like anyway, that is now null and void.
Yeah.
But that was an initial kind of like,
Do you want to? Should we talk about our initial thoughts? Because so my initial 2 listens happened back to back. I went in for a day. There was a listening party.
Same with mine.
2 people, and I just stayed in the room and went, I'm going to stay and listen to it again.
Yeah.
So I listened to it back to back twice over a sort of 3.5 hour period. And
it's exhausting, isn't it?
It
was so exhausting doing it that way.
YouTube, I made this amount of notes about it. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages, 9.5 pages of notes for the record on that 2 listening period, and like that listening period of double back to back this record.
I made an A4 page of for each song worth of notes.
Yeah. And I think while you're scribbling along, listening to these songs, I came out of it being like, wow, Tool, aren't they great? They're so great. They're so brilliant. And I kind of walked out feeling more impressed than emotionally invested in it.
Yeah.
So I went out and I thought, it's a bit shitty. Like, I wouldn't listen unless I was, obviously I do have to write notes down when I'm reviewing albums, but I want it to be really, really short. So I was like, do you mind if I come back tomorrow and let's do it again? Because I want to get this just right. And I thought the next day I'm going to come back. I'm not going to bring my book with me. I'm not going to write any notes. I'm just going to sit there. I'm going to stare up at the sky and
just listen,
the ceiling, and I'm just going to
take it in
and take it all in. Which is quite difficult because I had Dan P. Carter from the Radio 1 Rock Show offering me peanuts next to me, but which I appreciate, Dan.
Thanks,
Dan. The offer, but I was sort of trying to zone out a little bit, and I had Phil Wilding from Prog Magazine going, like pulling funny, going, "Is that it?" after every song as well. So it was quite hard to do that, but I sat there and I listened to it all. And I didn't make any notes, and I just tried to let it take me. And that's when it got me. It properly got me.
Agreed. That's the thing. The manner in which they effectively asked us to listen to this album is not how people listen to records,
Yeah.
which is basically what you just said. But you know, that is not, you know, you don't sit down and take notes. You just I remember when I listened to 10,000 Days for the first time, I just locked myself in my room and lay on my bed and just,
I did.
you know,
turn the lights off. I was
yeah.
like, get out, fucking everyone.
Yeah. Let the whole thing sweep over me. And once you do that,
I've gone out like I got loads of people in my bed in 2006.
once you do that, I think the emotional impact of the record comes through, because my first listen, I was so busy concentrating on whoa, polyrhythms. Oh, they're using 7 a lot. Oh, Danny Carey's drumming is amazing. You know, I was so busy concentrating on all those technical aspects of it that I didn't really listen to the emotional connection of it, which is Maynard, I guess. And I suppose another thing...
But not only because, I mean, we should say as well, one thing I've noticed immediately from the first listen is Maynard is used incredibly sparingly in this record.
Far less than he has been in the past. Yeah,
I
definitely.
would say less than... This is the least Maynard-heavy album that he has ever appeared on.
Ooh.
That he's fronted. I mean, obviously, White Pony doesn't count.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. My only contender for that would maybe be the first Pussifer album, but you're probably still right. Yeah. Again, I don't want to go back to this and throw it in your face over and over again. But another reason why I sort of call it a post-rock record, because there are very few vocals on it. There are vocals on it, but in comparison to what we've heard in the past, there aren't really any songs that it feels like Maynard leads.
No.
You know, which is fine. I mean, some people will probably be disappointed by that, but it's very much a latter day Maynard James Keenan performance. The album it reminded me of the most is Eat the Elephant, which I suppose is
Really?
in terms of how he performs and the timbre of his voice. He comes in quite high on a lot of these things, but high and soft. I don't think he screams once on the record. The kind of the old Maynard of screaming on the likes of The End of the Grudge or throughout Ticks and Leeches. There's absolutely none of that at all on here.
Nope.
And I don't think we're ever going to get that Maynard again, which is fine. But you know, that is not on here at all. And I mean, to be fair, I mean, if I had been presented with the music that those 3 incredible musicians, all of whom I would say on this album are at the top of their game, if I'd presented with that music and said, right, now put words on it, there would be an element of lyrics on it. There'd be an element of me which is I don't want to fuck it up. Yeah. I don't want to insinuate that this record would be as good without lyrics and Maynard's contribution, because I don't think it would.
No, I don't.
But I do think it would still be a fucking amazing record, even without Maynard's contribution.
I mean, it's incredible to listen to a band who... Most bands will put their singer as the focal point.
Yeah.
And most bands, if they don't do that, one of the other instruments will become the kind of lead instrument when there is no vocalist.
Yeah.
So the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's Flea.
Yeah.
Right? Van Halen, it's Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
Right, we could do this all day, but you get what I'm saying. It's fairly rare that, to be honest, I can't even think of another one, where even within one song, every instrument will become the lead instrument for a bit. I mean, on the second track, Numia,
great song,
which is absolutely incredible. I mean, it's almost like they're pulling the song in the direction that they want it to go in, and it barely, all 3 of them, Danny Carey, Justin Chancellor, Adam Jones, barely play the same riff, the same part, the same beat, the same rhythm, the same bass line. They barely play it twice.
Hardly
the
ever.
Song.
Hardly ever. Oh, hardly. I didn't even argue on the album.
Yeah, I would.
And
particularly, it really struck me in that song. I was like, Danny Carey comes to the forefront and he plays something, and then the second time around he plays it completely differently, so that Justin Chancellor becomes the most prominent thing. And then do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's not even like music. It's like It's like nature. It's like, it sounds pretentious to say it's like nature. It's like wind, but it's so unpredictable.
It's like wind.
It's like wind.
They're not going to want to put that on the poster, I don't
No.
think. Actually,
Probably
with Maynard's sense of humour, they probably would.
But you know what I mean? It's like you can't predict even when it kind of on a very, very surface level, you'd go, oh yeah, they're just doing this part.
Yeah.
Even that part itself changes so that it kind of phases in and out of.
I know what you mean.
In charge of it.
It's not it's never ever a switch. It's never ever like this is Justin's part and now this is Danny's part. It happens so subtly and so lucidly and fluidly that you don't even notice it until it's happened.
And so when they do kick in together, when they all come together,
it's so big.
You know, it's like
so big. Yeah,
incredible.
It's like a hurricane.
Volcano erupting.
Yeah. Every time it's like a hurricane. Even though you've heard, you know, they did it 10 minutes ago, it's still like a hurricane because every time it just beats you in the chest or the gut, or it's absolutely monstrous every time they come together. Yeah. With it. It's brilliant.
It really is. But there's also, I was going to talk about so you haven't heard Legion Inoculum, have you?
The version I have heard, now, we probably need to talk about interludes and tracks and so on and so forth.
Even I don't think I've heard the proper version.
Okay. So there is a physical release, which is around, I think it's 79 minutes and 10 seconds, something like that. And then there is a digital release, which has an additional 3 tracks, all of which are interludes. Which is 86 minutes and something or other seconds. I can't remember off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. You posited, well, in fact, are you allowed to say that you're the one interlude for each member of the band?
Yeah. So each member of the band gets their own. So I've been told each member of the band made their own interlude part.
And the interlude that is on the physical, I think it's interesting that they have chosen, because they could have quite easily just gone, we'll just take off all the interludes and release the CD with the 6 songs on it. But they've chosen to keep Danny Carey's interlude on, Chocolate Chip Trip, which is effectively a 21st century version of Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
It's actually, I wonder actually if it has, you know that song, I think it's called Macabre on Salivial?
Yeah.
I don't know for a fact, but I wonder if it's a shortened version of that, which has been worked on in the past sort of 17, 18 years, because there are definitely similarities between the two.
Well, yeah, and it's one thing I did, apparently Danny Carey plays the synth on it.
Right.
And plays it live when they do it.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
He plays all that stuff live. I mean, he goes full Buddy Rich.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
At the end, it goes absolutely crazy. I've put down that it goes prog dubstep, well techno, horror movie creepy, like a haunted Nintendo.
Yeah, haunted Nintendo is brilliant. And there's a gong in it. There's 2 gongs.
Yeah,
big gong. But it's interesting that they've decided that is an important part of the record, or important enough to be on the physical release, I suppose I should say.
We said that, I mean, I wasn't sure, but you think that is actually a song? Because I was like, that's Danny Carey's little bit.
I have many theories, frankly. I know that because Adam Jones has said it multiple times in interviews, the number 7 is vitally important to this album.
Right.
So I think the fact that there are 7 tracks on the physical release is no coincidence. There are plenty of songs on the record which are clearly counted in as a 7 beat. And I'm going to paraphrase him now because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he said basically the great thing about having a beat of 7 is it, for Western ears, certainly, it does the amount of beats you expect it to, and then adds 1 more, because we're so used to having things in either 4s or 3s, basically. And it just shifts you off a little bit, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. And most people listening probably won't consciously be aware of it. Musicians and stuff will be counting and, finding all this shit out. But like most people will just be like, that sounds a little off and a little weird, but I don't know why. And that's, partly what I like about Tool.
Yeah.
Now we know that the number 7 is important for lots of reasons. I think it just kept coming up with this album. So having 7 tracks on it, I mean, I've tried a number of things. Tool have a lot of history in the past with playing around with songs, and the key one that I would reference is Wings for Marie. If you play, so there's a bonus track at the end of 10,000 Days called Vigilante Trees, and on its own it just sort of sounds like howling through the forest kind of thing. But if you put it on top of the first part of Wings for Marie Part 2, and then immediately play the Wings for Marie Part 1 after it, it creates what you could effectively call Wings for Marie Part 3. It creates a whole new song.
Yeah.
And this is something which I thought, this is all theory, by the way, I have no idea, but I thought number 7, you can put something in the middle of number 7, 3.5, and you can fold it in on itself and it becomes a mirror of itself. I've done a lot of experiments with trying to, put songs on top of other songs, because there's a lot of space in these songs. There's a lot of points where you go, yeah, you could put something over that and it would work, as is the case with Wings for Marie Part 1 or Part 2 if you just listen to them on their own. So far I haven't found anything, but
I was so gearing myself up to be like, you know what, Invincible and Cullen Voices, if you play them both backward, it's a cover of My Sharona or something. Do you know what I mean?
But I can't help, this might be total nonsense, but I can't help but feel like there's something there. What kind of got me thinking along these lines is the logo.
Yeah.
Do you know about this?
Well, I know that it's, I've seen it, yeah, and it's what are they called? An optical illusion, is that right?
No. If you get the new logo, if you fold it in on itself, if you fold it in half and make it so that it becomes vertical lines rather than horizontal lines, it actually forms a syringe.
Ah, yes, I have seen that. Yeah, I've seen the little video of that.
And the title of the album is For Inoculum, and Inoculum is, when you inject a body into someone, an agent or a disease, often into someone's body. A cure, yeah, exactly. To cure them of that disease. 9 times out of 10, it is actually you're actually injecting, the disease in it to make your body's natural defenses build up to it. So effectively, this album is an inoculator against fear. I think that's what they want to tell us, and I think that's the starting point for whatever this whole record is about. But on all of these things, sometimes Tool detractors usually dismiss this stuff and go, "Oh well, it's just a coincidence that happens," and it's like, it really isn't.
It's definitely not coincidence.
It's definitely not
coincidence.
coincidence.
Snooty nonsense if you want, but you definitely can't say that it's an accident.
No.
Nothing about this band is a fucking accident.
Well, that's why it takes so much time. And I think, quite often when I talk to Tool detractors, it's all that stuff that they can't be arsed with. They're like, oh, you have to do a fucking essay just to fucking like the band or whatever. But the truth is what's wonderful about Tool is you don't have to look into any of that stuff to enjoy their music.
No, I mean, I don't really.
Yeah.
They're my favourite fucking band, and I have a passing interest in that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I love it because I'm very nerdy about all that kind of stuff, and I'm really into it. But if you do look into it, and if you do discover it, especially if you discover it for yourself, it becomes so rewarding, so much more rewarding than anything else. I mean, it's a fucking time drain. The amount of I've been playing around with tracks on Audacity for far too many hours this week, and it's all been a total waste of time so far. So I'm a little bit annoyed, but what I've kind of come to the conclusion, I mean, I think because I don't have the full length version, I think it's going to be, I reckon these interludes will have something to do with it.
Right. Okay.
I would have thought, and I would encourage people. You know, I might be leading people down a path of utter nonsense and bullshit, which I don't really want to do.
Well,
But I would not be surprised at all if there is something in that.
okay. Well, I can't really tell you if that's true or not. But what I will say is this, right? Is that the one that was cut out? So basically, I heard it with 9 tracks.
Okay.
I've got it on Apple Music here. There's 10 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I didn't hear is Litanie contre la peur.
That's French for litany against fear, which obviously which goes into the album.
So I've not heard that. I presume that is some sort of interlude.
Yep, it's 2 minutes and 14 seconds apparently.
Okay, right. So, you know, I did hear Legion Inoculum, and I did hear Mockingbird, which are the 2 that you, I believe, haven't heard.
That's right.
Legion Inoculum, let me just double check my notes because obviously I've not had a chance to listen back to that, but that is the kind of Blade Runner-y one, I think. Yeah, it's a kind of, I imagined, once I found out that each member had a chance to do their own thing, I was like, okay, well, let's see if I can guess who's who. Chocolate Chip Trip has got to be
Bloody
Danny
obvious.
Carey.
Yeah,
Got to be
yeah.
Danny Carey.
Yeah.
I would presume that what did I just call it? Legion Inoculum. Legion Inoculum. I would presume that is Adam Jones
Okay.
because it's quite cinematic. It feels there's a bit of Vangelis. It's quite sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
It's very synth laden, and I mean, you know, one of the, not so much Tool really, but more Maynard James Keenan, one of the kind of the key things that Maynard James Keenan, one of the most Maynard James Keenan things to do is to talk about how nature and genuine human interaction that's become his kind of byword, isn't it? Like, this is, you know, that's what Eat the Elephant is. So much of Eat the Elephant is about, you know, technology is slowly destroying our ability to be able to see the kind of the real world and the important things in the world,
but also how nature and human beings are connected. So I think as well. So the Fibonacci sequence on Lateralis, I won't go into it here because you're about to make a point, but look it up if you've not.
But Legion Inoculum goes from very kind of harsh industrial electronic sounds into the sound of water.
Right.
And then, you know, when it goes into... Sorry, it's Invincible, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, when it goes from Legion Inoculum into Invincible...
I think it's Descending, actually.
Descending.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Sorry, I've got the wrong
That's okay.
thing in front of me. Yeah, Descending. And, you know, there seems to be a lot of, you know, talk about finding yourself within the world in that song. So I think that's quite typical of Maynard James Keenan, and it does seem to be like a bit of a battle between nature and technology. I think those two things definitely, like, there's a lot of push and pull on this record between those two ideas, and which is, you know, like I say, I think that's quite a... This is not the first time that they've explored those ideas.
Definitely
not. Mockingbird, which was like the last song, I think is the last song, actually.
It's birds singing, is it not?
It's bird song, yeah. It's a parakeet. It's kind of mixed up parakeets.
Okay.
Scratching, and it all, yeah, like them being recorded on a record and then a DJ going...
Oh, right.
Like all that.
Okay.
And then it ends. So I guess that's Justin, I guess.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll see.
Who
knows?
All I would say is there are a lot of people who are like, you know, who will listen to Tool records and take the interludes out and say that there's no importance to them, blah, blah, blah. Tool have always maintained that there is, but I think that is only the case if you want to look into it, you know, on a much, much deeper level. And I would use the Virginity Trees, Wings for Marie example as well. Like, you know, Virginity Trees on Trez on the last record is it's kind of pointless listening to it on its own. But when you understand its purpose there and why it's there, just creates this whole new thing, which, you know, I find mind-blowing. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But that's the whole thing with Tool. The more you look into it, the better it becomes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess there are some people who... This is why it's weird. Like, it's weird getting a new Tool album when there's been so long without one, because you're essentially now... I mean, I think definitely not people who listen to our podcast. I would like to think almost certainly not people who listen to our podcast, because every week we say you must sit down and listen to this record, and you must immerse yourself in it, and you must explore that, to the fullest. And it feels like every other week we bring a record on and go, you really need to listen to
the whole thing,
like the whole thing, and really kind of sit down and immerse yourself in it. But those bands tend to be not massive. Do you know what I mean? Not commercially. There's a chance. I mean, it's funny. I was saying to my mate today. I feel like there would have been a chance had the vinyl have been released for pre-order, because the vinyl's currently not available. The CD is, and it's quite pricey because they've got some sort of mad package.
4-inch HD screen within the packaging, plus 2-watt speakers, and there is actually another song which you can only hear via that version. You have to watch it on the TV screen.
Oh, but that sort of thing, I said, like if the vinyl was available, like let's go down to fucking HMV or whatever your local record shop is, or pre-order on Amazon. After Slipknot getting to number one, I could see Tool getting fairly close. I mean, I think with Taylor Swift's got a new album out, so I think it's going to be quite difficult to knock her off the top spot. But
well, I hope I'm not saying anything I shouldn't, but pre-orders for this album have been fucking insane, and the fact that each unit is very pricey, it's actually quite a lot more expensive in this country than it should be. Partly because of Brexit, I was told. Yay. But anyway, it's complicated reasons. It's not just that, but there's lots of reasons. But despite the unit price being quite expensive, a lot of money, and the fact that it's being released on what the majority of people see as a redundant format, the physical pre-orders have been fucking mad, like sky high, incredible. And some countries base Germany, for instance, base their charts not on how many units are sold, but how much money is given over. So that gives them even more of a chance, and blah, blah, blah. So number one record for Tool, yeah, definitely not beyond the realms. But actually,
it's going to be. It
will be tough.
I think it's going to be tough. If Taylor Swift hadn't dropped that record, I think it would have been more likely. I really think, because for me, I want the vinyl.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? I want it on vinyl, and I think if the vinyl was coming out the same day, I think most people who would be invested in this are going to want it on vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I probably will buy it on CD. I'm just fucking giving loads of CDs away at the moment, but I probably will still buy it anyway, because I'm a fucking collector and a nerd.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to Tool stuff.
You better, by the sounds of things, you better be quick, because they're running out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do adore this fact that Tool subvert everything that you're quote unquote supposed to do in order to be a big band or commercially viable or whatever. Not having their songs on streaming services for as long, holding out as long as they did, it's insane.
Holding out longer than the Beatles and Prince stuff.
Mad. Releasing an album that, I know Fear Inoculum was released as a single, but it isn't a single.
No.
There are no, Adam Jones.
I said in my review of Metal Hammer, and I kind of think I stand by it as well, the closest thing we get to a single in this really is, it's not even a whole song. I think it's the first half of Invincible. You could go, that's kind of Schism-esque.
Oh, right, okay.
But that's only the sort of first 6 minutes of it.
Yeah.
It's 12 minutes and 44 seconds long.
Yeah.
Once you get past that kind of 6 to 7 minute long, you're talking about like the most accessible is a 7 minute long song. Like, who else?
Yeah.
Like when Avenged Sevenfold released in a 7 minute long single, people were talking about them like they were the most
insane band in the world.
Oh my god, they're mad, aren't they? They're so like, what I mean? They're so forward thinking. They just don't give a fuck. There is nothing that could be considered a single on this. Yeah,
no, absolutely nothing. And I love the fact that there is a band who just go, well, this is how the art will be. I mean, there's a few bands who do this, but this is how the art will be better. Yeah. We're not pandering down.
They're certainly not as big as Tool, though, any of those bands are.
No. I was thinking maybe Nine Inch Nails. Are they as big as Tool?
Yeah, I think Nine Inch Nails are comparable.
Yeah.
Even Nine Inch Nails, like, You're right, a single, right?
Yeah. Not in the same way. I think Nine Inch Nails won't compromise on their art in different ways. But yeah. It's I think it. And there's a lot of people who get. I've talked to so many people who fucking hate this packaging idea and think it's dreadful. That's the only way that you can get a physical version, all that sort of thing. But I kind of think it should be celebrated that a band who stick to their morals and stick to how they want the art to be so rigidly is able to be this much of a success. That is,
I worry that it prices people out a little bit. I will say that.
I mean, it is certainly in this country, it's probably too much money. And it is
what are you looking at? 75 quid, right?
It's 80 in this country. Yeah.
For a CD.
For a CD, yeah. I mean, we haven't seen them yet. We haven't seen we haven't seen what it does. I mean, if it was the, one thing I will say, the 10,000 Days lenticular glasses thing. I mean, that sounded really cool and was kind of a bit meh when it came out, I would say, so.
And that was 15 quid when it was released.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to see. We can't really, there's very few albums where we would review the packaging. I mean, maybe it does deserve a review. I don't know.
We'll see. The thing, actually, we've kind of gone off on one a bit there, because what my original point was is that even though on this podcast we review a lot of records where we would probably treat them with the same kind of level of respect as we would Tool. I don't think Tool are unique in comparison to how we would probably speak about, you mentioned Nine Inch Nails, Her Name is Calla, I would put in that kind of the fucked up album, obviously, of course I would. And there are many records that have come out,
definitely,
like Teeth of the Sea or whatever, that you could go, well, you really should sit down and kind of
listen to the whole thing.
Listen to this a few times and let it really seep into your psyche and get it.
Definitely.
But as I mentioned, those bands aren't as big as Tool. And it feels weird to be talking about a band who do all this stuff when they've been away for so long and no one else has really done it to that level. Like, this is... Even with Rammstein, right? Rammstein were a band who, Tool get... Because Rammstein had, we didn't get a kind of stream of Rammstein. You were invited along to a listening party of the Rammstein record, which I was going to go to, and then at the last minute I couldn't go to. But Rammstein did it in a very similar way. Rammstein were away for 10 years. But even Rammstein feel like way more commercially viable and more in touch with at least participating in what the modern world wants them to do.
For starters, Rammstein have singles.
Definitely.
Yeah. They released, how long is that record? 55 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
It's 11 songs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Rammstein are a traditionally commercial act in any way, shape or form, but compared to Tool, they kind of are. Yeah.
I think Pink Floyd are compared to Tool.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty insane.
And I feel that should be celebrated. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people who aren't celebrating that, but I feel like it should be. Yeah. It feels like we really, really, really should. I mean, unless you feel like I'm skipping over anything, it feels like we should really talk about Tempest or Seven.
Yes,
Pest,
I do.
Doesn't it?
I mean, I was actually about to say, in terms of the actual music, which we have skirted around. We've been talking about the album for God knows how long. We've kind of skirted around the music. I mean, as you mentioned before, I think there is a similar pace throughout the record for the most part.
Certainly, I would say for the first, taking out the interludes, first 5 tracks. So Fear Inoculum, Pneuma, Invincible, Descending, and Culling Voices.
Are all kind of... they're all great, like you say.
Yep,
I think
all
they're
brilliant.
All, they're all over 10 minutes long. They all weave incredible spells. They all go in completely different directions. They all end in ways that are totally different from what came from at the start.
Well, often it's actually the same riff. But so much more expanded. This is another reason why I suspected it might be a mirror album, because there's so many times where tracks mirror one another if you folded them in on themselves. But anyway, that's another theory.
But then it comes to 7 Tempest, which is what I guess we're going to call it. It's Tempest, isn't it?
It's Tempest,
but
yeah.
It's 7 instead of a T. Tool.
Silly boys.
15 minutes, 43 seconds long. Now, this is one, I'm going to get my notes for this, because this is one, when I first heard it, straight away, I was like, wow.
Well, I will say very quickly here, typical Tool to make the longest song, not only on this record, but the longest song they've ever recorded, by far the most immediate track on the record.
Yeah.
By far.
Like, for real.
Not necessarily the best, although you may disagree with me. And I think only time will tell if it's the best, but most definitely the most immediate.
I put this as the most instantaneous one for the metal fans.
Yeah.
And the heaviness of it means that, to me, it is the most diverse song on the record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the most eclectic. It goes further.
Yeah.
Because, not all of it is... there's a point where I thought it ended, and then it kind of comes back up again.
Yeah.
I do think it is the best song on the record.
Fair enough. I mean, I would probably say that now, but I'm only 8 listens in. When I'm 800 listens in, I may disagree. But who knows?
Quite a good point, to be fair.
That's all I'm saying. It probably is my favourite track on the record right now, but in 3 years' time, who knows?
It's not as clean as the rest of the record, is it?
Nope.
It's genuinely quite heavy. There's a point where, and I don't, there's a few things when you say about things you haven't heard Tool do. There's a few things in this record that I haven't heard Tool do. There is a very pronounced 70s, like early 80s, almost John Carpenter, Vangelis synthesizer sound.
Yes.
Is in this record.
Yes. I think
whether that's Adam Jones's kind of chameleon-like skills as a guitarist.
They've had touches of it. Again, in Reflection, which I've already mentioned, and there's another song as well. It might even be right into From 10,000 Days. Don't quote me on that. But they've only touched on that synth sound before, whereas it's on this quite a lot.
It's on it a fair bit, yeah, and it's it's on here. But also, I don't think I've ever heard Tool, as they do in Tempest, do a dual guitar Iron Maiden, Judas Priest metal 2 guitar part.
Yeah,
that chug.
Yeah,
they've never done that before.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm so glad you said Iron Maiden, because I wrote Iron Maiden in my notes and I thought, I'm gonna have a fight with Steve about this, aren't I?
Well, no,
but it is Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
It's brilliant though, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
it's like Iron Maiden on ketamine. It's like a little bit slower.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not ketamine. That's a bit harsh.
But so the first time I listened to it, in one of my notes here, and I probably don't think this now, which goes to show how much this album sort of changes and morphs the more you listen to it. But I've put that Adam dominates this track, and I say it's the only time on the record where one member of the band leads the whole band throughout the whole song. But I'm not sure if that is true. That's from my first listen. But the fact that I thought that the first time around, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be reading stuff from what I wrote the first time around, because I'll probably turn the page in a minute and think, at the end, my last thing I put, this is a great record. Cheers, mate. Journalist.
That's why you tune in.
But yeah, that's kind of the first thing. I've also put Core Blimey a couple of times as well.
I will say that Adam Jones on this song particularly, but actually throughout, Adam Jones has very rarely been much of a solo. You certainly know it when he's soloing. End of Third Eye is a great example. He has a very distinct, unique solo sound where he uses a lot of feedback, a lot of long, drawn-out notes, which are ever so slightly discordant and give this really
parabola,
odd feeling. It's almost like a twisting feeling. His, for want of a better word, solo on this song is fucking outrageous. I don't know. I play guitar. I have done for half my life. I haven't got a fucking clue what he's doing. I have no idea. I think he's using a slide and some effects, but I haven't got a clue, really.
It's very impressive.
Insane. And it is impressive, but it's not an impressive in a Animals as Leaders impressive
No.
sense. I mean,
you're in on it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's actually, when I'm talking about a sort of an emotional reaction to it and having an emotional resonance, there are bits in, I can't go back to it, but I think it's in Descending where I was like, the swell of his guitar and the tone of his guitar, it wails in a way that feels like Tool feel human.
Yeah.
And I'm really like, if there's one thing that the detractors will say about them being this nerdy band and this and that, and like it's all really geeky and it's all just about weird time signatures and it's really clinical. Like I said, the first time I listened to this record, the first 2 times I listened to this record, I just thought how fucking impressive that human beings are capable of that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like how unbelievably, like, of course I love them because wow, isn't this incredibly impressive? But actually, there are points, not even points. I was about to say something else. But Tool sound human. Like Tool don't sound like, you mentioned animals as leaders. There's a few bands that I've listened to from the kind of more post-rock or proggy sphere, where sometimes I just go, this doesn't really have any heart to it a lot of the time.
I think that's what marks
and the tech bands particularly.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing here that isn't just, we should do this because it'll impress people.
Yeah.
And it takes away any kind of intention. It takes away any kind of, heart from it. And Tool, this feels like human beings playing in a room together.
I think you have hit on exactly what makes Tool better than those other bands. And what makes Tool the leaders.
One of the things.
Well, sure, but I think that is a massive one.
It is,
I think that is a massive one. This is an incredibly technically impressive record, but I'm never listening to it in that sense. Maybe the first time, but actually, I'm only listening to it in that sense because when I first heard this, I thought I'm only going to get 2 listens of this before I need to talk about it extensively on a podcast.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm going back about an hour now, but I think that's why when you said Meshuggah was the big influence on the last record, I was a bit like, it feels, I don't think you're wrong, but Meshuggah feels, I know they hate hearing it, but the too machine-like to be compared to Tool,
Yeah, but I think,
I don't think
they were obviously,
we're
going, well, that's cool that they can do that. Let's try and do a bit of that. Add a little bit of that to our sound. I think that's...
But Tool never suffer from that. And
no,
Maynard's a large part of it, but I think this record also shows that all 4 members of the band, none of them sound mechanical in anything that they're doing. Danny Carey's drumming is often impressive, but it's never mechanical. The way that Adam Jones plays those notes, whether it's a riff, I think particularly in his solos, is it sounds like pure emotion sometimes. I mean, his guitar is screaming on 7-pes, 10-pes, whatever. And Justin Chancellor's his bass tone alone, I could talk about for about an hour, which I won't. But it's beautiful. It's stunning. It's like
he plays bass like no one else.
Yeah, he plays bass like no one else. It's angelic at times, and it's often Justin who is providing the bass foundation or riffs for all of these songs. I mean they've done that a lot in the past. Just look at Schism as an example. That is Justin's riff. It's not Adam's. But particularly with this record, it feels like a lot of the time he is the foundation, but he's a foundation which is going all over the place. It's magical.
And I mean, you mentioned obviously Danny Carey bringing in stuff like Indian tablas
and stuff like that,
and African kind of Afro-Celt rhythmical things as well, which
more
are very much more pronounced. Like he's done that before, but again, it's much more pronounced,
much more prominent.
This album. And then it's hard to like the idea of trying to pick a man of the match for this album is impossible because I don't think any of them can exist without each other, and they're all very, very impressive on their own. But it's as a unit where it really does make them so special.
Oh yeah.
But I have to say, I was coming back today from work and I was listening to it one last time, and Invincible starts with just this kind of picked Adam Jones riff.
Yeah.
And
very clean picked
and
riff.
It probably goes on for 3.5 minutes without anything else happening.
It's pretty long. Yep.
And I listened to it on headphones, and actually when we were listening to it in the room with all the sofas where we first listened to it, I was like, it's like he stood behind me. It's like he's in there. This is not, Tool might be really mystical and mythical, and this album is a fucking, I think in the Metal Hammer review I called it an enigma inside of a Pandora's box of an album.
Yeah.
But they still feel like people making this record.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really human. And I think that actually makes it even more impressive, because you can listen to bands play a million notes an hour and, blast beats and all the other stuff, and it can lose everything apart from the technicality. That's really, really impressive. Wow, it's cool that people can do that. But do they actually feel like people? Whereas Tool actually do feel like people. And I think getting that balance to the point where they've got it, where they are just exceptional at both of those things to this degree, to this standard, at this point I'm like, 13-year wait, I'd wait another 13 years if I was going to get something as good as this again.
Yeah, I think I think that's what takes the time. I mean, we should be clear that this album has not taken 13 years to make, because there's been legal wranglings and they've been touring 10,000 Days and all sorts of things, and Maynard's been doing Pucifer and Perfect Circle. It did take about 3 years to make, and even like these big prog rock masterpieces or prog metal albums, will often take about 6 months, and it's that kind of thing which is what takes so long to make it sound human or less mechanical, or getting a part where Justin and Adam are playing off of one another, might be playing totally different rhythms, but somehow it all mixes and colludes in a way that it actually works, and that's the thing that Tool do, which almost every other band doesn't, and that's why we talk about them in this kind of, with this level of awe, I suppose.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I was going to use. Awe. Having lived with it 8 listens in, I know we've spoken about it quite a lot, but I almost feel like we should come back to it in the end of the year.
Well,
I'm sure spoiler alert.
Yeah.
There's no the idea that this wouldn't be in my top 20 albums of the year is insane.
Yeah.
Like you all know that it's going to be in there.
Yeah.
So we will be talking about it later on.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And I think we should do, and it deserves to be talked about. I mean, maybe not for this long, but again, because you cannot. 10,000 Days took me about 3-4 years before I really loved it. Like, at first I was like, oh, it's a good album, and it took several years before I went, actually, it is a brilliant album, and it is almost as good as Lateralis and Anima,
What do you anticipate the reaction to this? So what we can't say exactly how great this is and where it sits in the... I mean, again, another music journalist who I won't name and shame listened to it once and went, it's definitely better than 10,000 Days, but it's not as good as Lateralis. I heard them say as they were walking out, and I just thought, you clearly don't understand this band at all. Like, you can't make that kind of proclamation after one fucking listen, especially when you spoke all the way through it, you prick. But anyway, so I'm not going to say like, well, where does it sit in their background? We can't have that.
I have to say, I've been asked that a lot over the past couple of days, and at the moment it's impossible to say.
Yeah, I think it's very, very, you get a feel of how you might feel of it.
Yeah, I've got a feel, but I wouldn't want to say.
But what we can say is what we think the reaction to it will be. What do you think the reaction to this is going to be?
I think it will be enormously polarizing and split to begin with. I think there'll be a week or two of... We live in a culture where even just when the single came out single. I mean, I do really feel like I need to go
13 years for that,
single.
what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. You had this polarizing thing of like, I mean, to judge Tool on a single is so. I didn't even listen to it because I was like, I don't want to listen to it until it's part of the full package, you know. But yeah, my timeline was full of either this is the best thing ever or this is the worst shit I've ever heard, you know. And you know, we talked about this earlier with the Diamond thing, that is the initial bullshit that you have to kind of navigate through before you actually understand where this album is going to be placed. I hope it will be placed enormously highly in people's regards, and I hope that a lot of people will take, and it, you know, sweeps album of the year lists at the end of the year and so on and so forth, because I would like to see an album this daring and this, I'd like to see a post-rock album this daring, which it effectively is, be taken to everyone's heart. And if there's any band who's going to release a record where everything is against it in a commercial sense, more air quotes, I think Tool are the band to do that, and it become a massive fucking success. But people are going to have to spend time with it, and they are going to have to listen to it a few times, and we live in an incredibly disposable society where, you know, there'll be another record out in a couple of weeks' time, and will people give it that? I mean, I will say I've been pleasantly surprised by the reaction to Tool since it went up on streaming. I thought a lot of young people would listen to them and go, I don't see what the fuss is all about. Like, listen to it once and go, I don't see what the fuss is about. And, you know, the reaction has been very, very positive, generally, I think. So I hope I'm pleasantly surprised and it is embraced as a genuinely brilliant record.
Yeah, me too. The thing is, like last time when you bought 10,000 Days, you better listen. You either go out and buy something else or you carry and listen to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not the case. We're in a totally different world now where you can listen to the Tool record once, totally dismiss it because you've not paid anything to do that once it's on streaming sites, and then not bother getting into it. And I think before they went up on streaming sites, I think that's what I would have assumed would happen to this record. But I've been really pleasantly surprised with how many people, usually young people, have turned around and gone, oh my God, Tool are brilliant, aren't they? You know? So it's like, yeah, we've been fucking telling you for years, but yeah. But so who knows?
They ain't just it'd take a brave person to take a punt on a fucking £100 picture disc of Lateralis on vinyl. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well,
I will say that. Like, I said, I just buy the albums, and people were like, Lateralis picture disc fucking vinyl is 100 quid. I'm not paying.
I mean, you know, MP3s of them do exist. There are they're always available digitally. You know, weren't they? You could buy them. Yeah. You know, so like, there are other ways. They're on YouTube. Yeah, if you really, you know,
want to be a prick about it. You want to listen to your fucking Tool on your telly.
Well, true. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that's that, isn't it?
Well, we could go on for hours, couldn't we? But it feels like a good place to stop it. I mean, there's several. We've not even talked about Culling Voices. We've barely talked about Invincible and Descending. I mean, those songs were released already. But
they are. I mean,
they're all brilliant.
About those songs are great. They're 10 minutes plus. They either start with a very ingenious piece of bass, stroke drum, stroke guitar, and the rest of the band slowly, like, smoke,
building on it. Yes,
everything kind of seeps in. This album doesn't. I suppose, again, to kind of really close up. I mean, that's the thing. The genius of Tool is that I don't ever feel like. It doesn't feel like it's played to a click track. It doesn't.
It's not.
Feel like. Well, I'm sure it's not. It doesn't feel like it's played to a click track. It doesn't feel like it's been too touched by computers. It all feels really real, but
organic.
It feels really organic. It feels really. It moves and it flows and it builds and it dissipates and it gives. It respects the other instruments. Like, they're just. It's a fucking master. Like, what it is whether you enjoy listening to this or not, you cannot deny this is an absolute masterclass in songwriting, in dynamics, in musical, in generosity, musical generosity,
in the manner in which four musicians interact with one another, and how they give one another space for their parts to breathe, but also each member is contributing something utterly outstanding as well. Yeah.
So there you have it. Let us know what you think. At @riot_podcast. We're on Twitter if you want to give a little review of the new Tool album.
Yeah, I would like
listen. I want to know what people think. I'm really intrigued to know what people think, especially the people who have. There'll be people who've never heard Tool before, who have never bothered with Tool until they came out on streaming services, who don't remember a Tool album being released, or kind of remember the last one being released, and do you know what I mean? But weren't really
definitely
that sort of thing. There'll be a lot of people that is true for. So, Fear Inoculum is out. See you in 2032 then.
Let's hope it's not that long.
Really.
Danny Carey was saying was it in Metal Hammer? He was saying if it's another 13 years, he'll be 71 by that time. Let's be a bit quicker next time.
I don't want to be doing that. My back hurt enough waiting to see him download by after I'm 39. I'll be 52.
Yeah.
52?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I'll be dead. So,
No, don't say that. Anyway,
with my cholesterol.
Fear Inoculum by Tool is out right bloody fucking now. Don't know why I did it in that accent. Let's talk